Every day, we perform a complex survival trick. We look at tiny, fleeting shifts in someone's face and instantly guess what they are hiding, feeling, or planning. Psychologists call this theory of mind, the ability to infer the invisible mental states of others. It makes intuitive sense to assume you build this skill through active practice. Navigating messy, real-world interactions seems like the only logical way to get better at reading rooms. But decades of research reveal something entirely counterintuitive. Sitting alone in a quiet room, completely isolated from human contact, to read about fabricated people actually improves your ability to read real people. This forest plot chart synthesizes over a dozen studies. Notice how the vast majority of data points cluster right of the center line, indicating a clear positive effect. Because these studies controlled for baseline differences, the data establishes a direct cause and effect relationship. The act of reading drives a measurable increase in social performance. Neurologically speaking, diving into a book acts as a rigorous, high-intensity workout for your social brain. Researchers David Kidd and Emanuele Castano wanted to figure out exactly how this cognitive mechanism operates, so they set up an experiment to test different types of texts. They discovered a catch. Having participants read popular, plot-driven fiction, like massive best-selling thrillers or conventional sci-fi, yielded zero improvement in their theory of mind scores. Handing these participants narrative nonfiction also failed to trigger the empathy-boosting effect. The cognitive upgrade only activated when participants were exposed to literary fiction, works where the narrative prioritizes character complexity over the mechanics of the plot. The empathy boost relies on the specific internal structure of literary texts, rather than the simple act of moving your eyes across words on a page. To measure these cognitive gains, psychologists use the Reading the Mind in the Eyes test, or RMET. Participants look at a cropped photo of a stranger's eyes and must choose the exact complex emotion they are expressing. Those who read literary fiction right before taking the test scored significantly higher than those who read genre fiction or nothing at all. They were measurably better at making the difficult cognitive leap required to identify nuanced feelings. Another assessment, called the Yanni task, strips away the human face entirely. It requires participants to infer thoughts and emotions from extremely minimal visual shapes and sparse linguistic clues. The Yanni task data completely corroborated the RMET results. The literary fiction group possessed a superior ability to extract accurate social information from highly limited inputs. Consuming literary fiction hones our capacity to parse the ambiguous, confusing emotional data we encounter in daily human interactions. So, what exactly exists inside the text of a literary story that forces this mental upgrade? Popular genre fiction leans heavily on established schemas. When you encounter an archetypal hero or villain, your brain uses pre-built mental shortcuts to conserve energy, letting you focus purely on the momentum of the plot. Literary fiction deliberately disrupts those shortcuts. Novels like Don DeLillo's Libra don't fixate on the mechanics of Lee Harvey Oswald's crime. They pull readers into the conflicting, heavily obscured motives behind his actions. Psychologists refer to the effort of navigating these motives as reflective function. This is the sophisticated mental modeling required to understand why a person behaves the way they do, especially when their reasons are opaque. Literary texts are dense with linguistic markers that require the reader to actively generate this web of internal states. You have to continually update your theory of the character's mind with every new paragraph. Literary fiction serves as a high-resistance cognitive flight simulator, specifically designed to train your brain for the complexities of social interaction. This effect extends beyond adult lab experiments. In early childhood development, reading is used as a deliberate educational tool. Educational researcher Irma Goes has documented how teachers systematically use these exact literary mechanics to program emotional intelligence into young students. In a classroom strategy called the feeling hunt, children are given texts where emotions are never explicitly stated. They are forced to deduce a character's unwritten mental state using only indirect contextual clues. Teachers also use the point of view shift. By asking students to rewrite a chapter of a Rick Riordan novel from a rival character's perspective, they force the children to construct a valid mental model of an opposing motivation. They implement what-if-I scenarios prompting students to mentally project their own consciousness into a character's simulated trauma or difficult situation. These educators take the structural mechanics of literary fiction and reverse engineer them to build a strong baseline of empathy in developing human beings. But that foundational childhood training isn't permanent. Like any muscle, the neural pathways dedicated to mind reading require continuous resistance training throughout our entire lives. If we coast entirely on familiar tropes and predictable archetypes, we remove that resistance, allowing our reflective function to slowly atrophy. Stories are the critical training data for human empathy. To become a better reader of real people, you must spend time reading complex books.